All right, everyone, it's time to return to the free Tommy Robinson issue because I know, for some weeks, a lot of people aren't really talking about it, but now there's a proliferation, at least at some degree, it seems, in parts of the UK of basically free Tommy Robinson posters and signs and people, I guess, spray painting it. I'm assuming that it's generally illegal to do that, posting any form of bill in a country that clearly has no freedom of press, actually pressing up a bunch of posters and plastering them somewhere with a political message. I'm sure the Crown is at least displeased by and shuns such behavior. But I think that it's a good thing. You can't simply have online activism. Here's one trap that millennials especially, I think, have fallen into, is thinking that the end-all be-all of everything is online. Here's the thing, that the two are connected. Real-life things happen because of online activism, but it does require some real-life urging. For instance, say you have a change.org petition, you get 1 million people to sign for, you've got a petition to ban basket weaving or something. Well, unless you go out and you actually stage, real life sort of activities, it's not really going to go anywhere. You have to go, at the very least, meet with the sort of people who are going to be passing any potential legislation. If you want to free Tommy Robinson, you got to realize that there is a segment of the population, it's not even the majority, but a segment that believes what the BBC says. They watch cable news and probably don't go online so much. If they see anything about Tommy Robinson, it might be part of a left-wing echo chamber of authoritarians that love the monarchy and think that it's a wonderful idea to tell people what they can and cannot say. By putting up posters and so forth, it can really be helpful. Because what that does is confront them, like on the streets in a totally neutral and maybe safe area, they're confronted with the same general message. And they can be confronted with it en masse, essentially print out thousands of posters relatively cheaply, post them up all over town at night, and then the next day, they wake up and they get their morning muesli, their third glass of Hobbit tea for the day. They look outside and all they see is Tommy Robinson's face looking back from every telephone pole. It would be pretty funny. So apparently this happened in Coventry. Which I've heard of, but I don't know exactly what I heard it of and in context before, in England. And it should happen elsewhere. People need to take that message. It's a good idea to, insofar as it's legal to do so, of course, disclaimer, it's a good idea to get that message out there, because in my estimation, Tommy Robinson really did nothing wrong. In the U.S., you would not face any repercussions from recording outside of a trial. No, in the U.S., what would happen is, hey, this person, we can certainly, when they're getting out of the cop car or whatever, walk into the court, we can cover their face. They're lawyers that they can cover their face, so forth. Try not to reveal personal info. Sequester a jury. If there's probable cause to put them on trial. We don't sit here worrying within this country, hey, the jury pool might be tainted, because the First Amendment rights of other people to record that venue are pretty ironclad. The most that the cops would do is say, hey, you need to stand back a reasonable distance because otherwise you're impeding. You're creating a public nuisance. That certainly could be against law, but again, you're probably not going to get arrested for it. They're just going to say, move to the other side of the street, or, can you move back 10 feet, get off the sidewalk if you want to record or something. It's not illegal. It's perfectly fine to do that. You can record the police. The Supreme Court has ruled in on that. You can record the trial venue. You can record, pretty much whatever you want, so long as you're not, stalking and harassing, being perverted about it or something. You've got a trench coat and nothing else on, and you're flashing people. You can do that. It's a foreign concept within the United States. I see people from the UK. They're like, well, they might, endanger the whole proceedings. How? Yes, a person, I'm sure, that faced with evidence, if you've got a jury at all, if there is enough evidence, it shouldn't really matter that someone else was rambling about it. And if there's not enough evidence, the fact that they're trying to indict them, supposedly, in the public square by recording and giving some degree of commentary isn't going to matter. That's the way that a jury trial is supposed to move. And meanwhile, Tommy Robinson gets thrown in jail on a judge's whim without any jury finding that he did anything wrong in the get-go, and he doesn't even have a lawyer present to defend him. Now look at the difference. One of these is a miscarriage of justice. The other is a normal trial proceeding. Which one's the miscarriage? It's the Tommy Robinson case. At the very least, he should have been able to defend himself. I suppose they just dragged him into the court and said, oh, well, you don't have a license for that iPhone, or, whatever crappy smartphone he was using at the time. It'd be funny if he was like he's a never Apple user and he's like using an Android or something. No, I think that he should be freed. I think, and it's preposterous that they gave him 13 months. He served like, what, a month of that? So yeah, for the next year, he gets to rot in a prison cell for, really nothing. What victim was caught? Where's the victim? If there's no victim, there's no legitimate crime. Oh, that's right, you live in a monarchy. Technically, we live in a parliamentary system. Okay, you live in a monarchy. You have a queen. Technically speaking, who can, I believe, dissolve parliament at any time. Maybe it might be best if you just went back to being royals. Maybe it might be better if the queen runs things. I think she's slightly ill at the moment, isn't she? She like skipped some church performance or visit to some cathedral. She's like, oh, I'm under the weather. Well, yeah, you're only under the weather for the 10th time this year. I think the gig is probably up within the next year or so. Now, Tommy Robinson did nothing wrong. He broke no legitimate law. It certainly would have been breaking the law under U.S. law. I don't understand why he's in prison. People are like, well, he violated the conditions of his sentence, of his probation. Who fucking cares? The probation itself was preposterous. That's the whole point. The law itself is an ass in that case. As far as posting up posters or whatever, I don't know whether it's legal in the UK to really weigh in on politics at this point. It seems like people get, at least visited by the Bobby because they had the wrong opinion on Twitter. In your case is someone said the wrong thing, they get dragged off to jail. That's crazy. You're living in 1984. You're living in a literal dystopia. You're living in exactly what the last generation warned you not to live under. It's like, hey, don't do this. It'll be a bad time. You'll be like disarmed. You'll be a slave, and it'll be just a miserable, dreary country that will slowly slide backwards and become, severely totalitarian. It's exactly where you're headed. You've got an inept government that jails reporters. It jails people for wrong think on Twitter, of all things, meanwhile ignoring actual crime with a victim. That's fundamentally what Tommy Robinson was about. And now some people are like, well, he's a virulent bigot and stuff. Well, no, criticizing Islam is not bigotry. You're criticizing a religion. I criticize Christianity. Does that make me Christophobic or something? No, of course not. It means you're criticizing a dogma that you happen to take exception with. You can criticize any other bit of literature, except not in the UK. I guess you can't criticize the Queen or something. You'd probably get thrown in jail for that too. And there'd be people who would find it acceptable. Oh, yes, well, you need to respect your monarchy. It's crazy talk. When there are groups that you can't criticize, then that becomes a little bit of a problem now, doesn't that say something about the larger ways of your society if there are groups that you're simply not allowed to talk about? Doesn't that worry you even slightly? For some of these people, I guess the answer, oddly enough, is no. It's really, really strange. That's about all. Peace out.